My sister framed me as a cheater and destroyed my wedding. So I gave her one final warning, then left her crying in a park with nothing but regret. I used to think that blood was thicker than water, that family bonds were unbreakable no matter what, until my sister destroyed my wedding in front of 200 guests and then had the audacity to demand a role in raising my unborn child. My name is Isabel Clark, and I'm 32 years old. I work as a freelance interior designer, building spaces that feel like home for other people while learning what that word truly means for myself. Right now, I'm 6 months pregnant with my first child, living in a cozy house with my husband Marcus, and for the first time in years, I actually feel genuinely happy. But that happiness came with a price, cutting ties with the family I thought would always have my back. The phone call came on a Tuesday evening while I was arranging fabric samples for a client's living room. I almost didn't answer when I saw Vanessa flash across the screen. My sister and I hadn't spoken in 4 years, not since the day she single-handedly destroyed what was supposed to be the happiest day of my life. But something made me pick up. "Izzy?" Her voice was softer than I remembered, almost tentative. "I know you probably don't want to hear from me, but I've been thinking about you a lot lately." I set down the fabric samples, my hand instinctively moving to my growing belly. "What do you want, Vanessa?" "I heard through Mom that you're expecting. Congratulations." There was something in her tone that I couldn't quite place. "I was hoping we could talk. I know things ended badly between us and I want to make things right." 4 years of silence, and now she wanted to make things right. I should have hung up immediately, but there was a part of me, the part that still remembered sharing secrets and dreams with my big sister, that hesitated. "I don't think that's a good idea. Please, Izzy. Just coffee. One conversation. I know I made mistakes, and I want to explain. I want to be part of your life again, especially now that you're starting a family." The way she emphasized starting a family sent a chill down my spine, though I couldn't explain why. Maybe it was the desperation hidden beneath her casual tone, or maybe it was just the trauma of what she'd done to me before. Either way, every instinct told me to say no. But then she played the card she'd always been master of. "Mom and Dad miss you terribly. They want to be grandparents, Izzy. Don't you think it's time we all moved past this?" I closed my eyes, feeling the familiar weight of guilt she'd always been so skilled at placing on my shoulders. "I'll think about it. That's all I'm asking. I love you, little sister. I always have." After she hung up, I sat in my design studio staring at the phone for a long time. Marcus found me there an hour later, still holding the device like it might explode. "Everything okay?" He settled into the chair across from my desk, his kind eyes full of concern. I told him about the call, watching his expression grow more worried with each detail. Marcus had been there for the aftermath of my wedding disaster, had helped me pick up the pieces when my world fell apart. He knew exactly what Vanessa was capable of. "You know this is a bad idea, right?" he said gently. "I know, but she sounded different. Maybe she's changed." "People like Vanessa don't change, Izzy. They just get better at hiding who they really are." He was right, of course. But there was still a part of me that wanted to believe my sister could be the person I'd once thought she was. The wedding should have been perfect. I'd planned every detail for months: the flowers, the music, the hand-calligraphed invitations. David, my fiancé, and I had been together for 3 years, and I was completely in love with the life we were building together. Vanessa had been my maid of honor, and despite our occasional sibling rivalry, I trusted her completely. The morning of the wedding, everything seemed to be going smoothly. Vanessa helped me get into my dress, fixed my hair when a pin came loose, and even gave a touching speech at the rehearsal dinner about how proud she was to call me her sister. I should have known something was wrong when she kept checking her phone and whispering to people, but I was too caught up in the excitement to pay attention. The ceremony was beautiful. David and I exchanged vows in front of our families and friends, and for those 30 minutes, I felt like the luckiest woman alive. It wasn't until we got to the reception that everything started to unravel. I was mingling with guests when I noticed David's best man, Jake, kept giving me strange looks. Finally, he pulled me aside during the cocktail hour. "Izzy, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be honest with me, of course." "What's wrong?" He showed me his phone. On the screen was a text conversation that made my blood run cold. The messages were from my number sent to Jake over the past few weeks, flirty messages, suggestive messages, messages that painted me as someone who was cheating on her fiancé with his best friend. "I never sent these," I whispered, scrolling through the conversation in horror. "Jake, I swear to you I never sent any of these messages." But the damage was already done. Jake had shown the messages to David that morning right before the ceremony my new husband had gone through with the wedding, thinking his wife had been having an affair with his best friend. The confrontation happened right there in the middle of our reception. David, his face red with anger and hurt, demanded to know why I'd been texting Jake. I tried to explain that the messages weren't from me, that someone had to have faked them, but how do you prove a negative? How do you convince someone that texts from your own phone number aren't real? "This is insane," I kept saying. "Why would I marry you if I was having an affair? Why would I go through with this whole wedding?" But David was beyond reason. 3 years of trust evaporated in the span of 20 minutes. He stormed out of the reception hall, and half the guests followed him. The other half stayed behind, staring at me with a mixture of pity and judgment. My parents were mortified. Instead of supporting me, they immediately went into damage control mode, apologizing to David's family, and trying to salvage what was left of their reputation. My mother actually suggested that maybe I had sent the messages and just forgotten about them. "Mom, do you really think I would do something like that?" "I don't know what to think anymore, Isabel. This is so embarrassing. Everyone's talking about it." Vanessa, meanwhile, played the role of the supportive sister perfectly. She hugged me while I cried, brought me tissues, and told everyone how terrible she felt for me. She even offered to help me figure out who might have sent the fake messages. "We'll get to the bottom of this," she promised. "Someone did this to you, and we're going to find out who." I was so grateful to have her support that I didn't question why she seemed to know exactly what to say, or why she wasn't as shocked as everyone else by the revelation. It took me 3 days to figure out the truth. 3 days of David refusing to speak to me, my parents treating me like I'd brought shame on the family, and friends avoiding my calls. I was staying in a hotel, having been asked to leave the house David and I had shared, when I decided to do some detective work. The fake text messages had been sent using a spoofing app, something that lets you send texts from any number you want. It's surprisingly easy to do if you know what you're looking for. But whoever had done it had made one crucial mistake. They'd used Vanessa's credit card to pay for the premium version of the app. I found the receipt in her email when I used her laptop to print out copies of our wedding photos. Ironic, considering those photos would never see the light of day. She'd left her email open, and there it was, a charge from Spoof Text Pro dated 2 weeks before my wedding. When I confronted her, she didn't even try to deny it. "You want to know the truth?" she said, her mask finally slipping. "I did you a favor. David was never good enough for you anyway. You destroyed my marriage. I saved you from making a mistake. And look how easily he believed those messages. If he really loved you, wouldn't he have trusted you more?" The twisted logic was so typically Vanessa that I almost laughed. She'd created the very situation she was now using to justify her actions. "Why?" I asked. "Why would you do this to me?" For a moment her composure cracked, and I saw something raw and desperate in her eyes. "Because you were going to leave me behind. You and David were talking about moving to Portland. You were going to have this perfect life, and I was going to be stuck here with nothing. So you decided I should have nothing too. I decided we should stick together, family should stick together." But it was too late for explanations. The damage was done, and our parents had already chosen their side. When I tried to tell them what Vanessa had done, they didn't believe me. It was easier for them to think their younger daughter had made some poor choices than to accept that their older daughter was capable of such calculated cruelty. I left town 2 weeks later with nothing but my car, my savings account, and a suitcase full of clothes. I didn't speak to any of them again. Building a new life from scratch is harder than people realize. I moved to a city where I didn't know anyone, rented a tiny apartment, and started over completely. For the first year I was angry and bitter, replaying the wedding disaster over and over in my mind. But gradually, I began to heal. I threw myself into my work, building up a client base through sheer determination and word-of-mouth referrals. I made new friends who knew nothing about my past and liked me for who I was, not who my family expected me to be. And slowly I started to realize that maybe Vanessa had accidentally done me a favor after all. Not by destroying my marriage, but by forcing me to discover who I was when I wasn't trying to live up to everyone else's expectations. Marcus came into my life 2 years ago, when I was hired to redesign his marketing firm's offices. He was nothing like David, quieter, more thoughtful, With a dry sense of humor that caught me off guard, he asked me out 3 times before I said yes, and even then, I was terrified of letting someone get close enough to hurt me again. But Marcus was patient. He understood that trust didn't come easily for me, and he never pushed for more than I was ready to give. When I finally told him about my family and what had happened at my wedding, he listened without judgment and then said something that changed everything for me. "I'm sorry they failed you like that. But their failure doesn't define your worth. We got married in a small ceremony 6 months ago, just us, 2 witnesses and a judge. It was everything my first wedding wasn't. Simple, genuine, and focused on what actually mattered. When we found out I was pregnant 3 months later, I felt like my life was finally complete, which is why Vanessa's phone call felt like such a threat. Against Marcus's advice, I agreed to meet her for coffee. I told myself it was just curiosity, that I wanted to see what she was up to after 4 years. But deep down, I think I was hoping she might actually apologize, that she might acknowledge what she'd done and try to make amends. The coffee shop she chose was in a neutral part of town, far from both our old neighborhood and my current one. She was already there when I arrived, sitting at a corner table with her hands wrapped around a latte cup. She looked older than her 34 years, with stress lines around her eyes and a brittleness to her smile that hadn't been there before. "Izzy." She stood up to hug me and I let her, though I kept the embrace brief. "You look amazing. Pregnancy suits you." I settled into the chair across from her, studying her face for clues about her real intentions. "You said you wanted to talk." "I did, I do." She took a sip of her latte, as if buying time to organize her thoughts. "I know things ended badly between us, and I want you to know that I regret how everything happened." Note that she said she regretted how things happened, not what she had done. It was a classic Vanessa move, acknowledging the outcome without taking responsibility for her actions. "Do you regret destroying my wedding?" She winced slightly. "I regret that you got hurt. That wasn't what I wanted." "What did you want?" "I wanted us to stay close. I was scared of losing you, and I made some bad choices because of that fear." "Bad choices?" I could feel my temper rising. "Vanessa, you didn't make bad choices. You systematically planned and executed the destruction of my marriage. You bought an app, created fake messages, and manipulated everyone into believing I was cheating on my fiancé. That's not a bad choice. That's calculated sabotage." She looked down at her cup. "I know it seems that way. It doesn't seem that way. It is that way." For a moment we sat in silence. Then she looked up at me with tears in her eyes, though I'd learned long ago not to trust Vanessa's tears. "I've had 4 years to think about what I did, and you're right. It was wrong, and I'm sorry. I'm so sorry, Izzy." I wanted to believe her. Despite everything, there was still a part of me that missed having a sister, that remembered the good times we'd shared before everything went wrong. "I'm glad to hear you say that," I said carefully. "But I'm not sure an apology is enough to fix what happened between us. I know it's going to take time to rebuild trust, but I'm hoping we can start somewhere." She leaned forward, her expression earnest. "I heard you're having a baby girl." I hadn't told her that. I'd barely told anyone the gender yet. "How did you know that?" "Mom mentioned it when I called to check on her last week. So she was still in contact with our parents." That stung more than I wanted to admit. And I was hoping I could be part of her life. I know I messed up with you, but I want to be a good aunt. I want to make up for lost time." Something about the way she said be part of her life made me uncomfortable. It was too vague, too open-ended. "What exactly does that mean to you?" "Well, I thought maybe I could help out when she's born. I could babysit, take her on outings, be involved in her upbringing. I know you're going to be a great mom, but every child needs as much love and support as possible, right?" There it was, the real reason for her sudden interest in reconciliation. My sister, who had never shown any interest in children before, suddenly wanted to be heavily involved in raising mine. "Vanessa, I appreciate that you want to be supportive, but I've been thinking about this a lot," she interrupted, her words coming faster now. "I know I hurt you, and I know I need to make amends. What better way to do that than by helping you raise your daughter? I could be like a second mother to her. We could co-parent in a way." Co-parent. The word hit me like a slap. My sister wanted to co-parent my child. "That's not going to happen," I said firmly. Her face fell. "Why not? I'm her aunt. I'm family. Family doesn't sabotage each other's lives out of jealousy and control. That was different. That was about us. This is about her. She gestured toward my belly. She deserves to know her aunt. Maybe someday if you prove that you've actually changed. But right now, I don't trust you enough to let you be around my child. Vanessa's expression shifted, and for a moment, I saw a flash of the anger I remembered from our childhood. But she quickly composed herself. I understand that you're angry with me, but punishing an innocent child for my mistakes isn't fair either. I'm not punishing anyone. I'm protecting my daughter. From me? From her own family? From someone who has proven that she's willing to destroy other people's lives to get what she wants. We stared at each other across the table, and I could see her calculating her next move. This was Vanessa at her most dangerous, when she was cornered and desperate. What if we started small? She said, switching tactics. What if I just came to visit sometimes, brought gifts, spent time with you both? I wouldn't ask to babysit or anything major until you felt comfortable. Vanessa, I think you should leave. Izzy, please, don't shut me out. I know I made mistakes, but I'm trying to make things right. I stood up, gathering my purse. Making things right would mean accepting the consequences of your actions and respecting my boundaries. It doesn't mean demanding access to my child. She's my niece. She's my daughter. And I decide who gets to be part of her life. I left the coffee shop feeling shaken and angry. Marcus was right. Vanessa hadn't changed at all. She was still the same manipulative person who thought she could control other people's lives to suit her own needs. But I underestimated how desperate she had become over the next few weeks. Vanessa began a campaign of escalating pressure. She started with text messages, long rambling apologies mixed with guilt trips about family loyalty and her rights as an aunt. When I didn't respond, she moved on to emails. When I blocked her email address, she created new ones. She sent flowers to my house with cards addressed to my future niece. She had gifts delivered, expensive baby clothes and toys that I immediately donated to charity. She even tried calling Marcus at work, claiming there was a family emergency and she needed to reach me urgently. But the final straw came when she showed up at one of my client meetings. I was presenting design concepts to a wealthy couple who were renovating their entire house, a 6-figure project that would keep me busy for months. We were in the middle of discussing fabric options when there was a knock at the door. I'm so sorry to interrupt, Vanessa said when the homeowner opened the door. I'm Izzy's sister, and there's been a family emergency. I excused myself and stepped outside, furious at the intrusion. What are you doing here? We need to talk. You won't answer my calls or texts, so I had to find another way. By disrupting my work? How did you even know I was here? I've been keeping track of your business. Your website lists your current projects. The fact that she'd been stalking my professional activities was terrifying enough. But the casual way she admitted it was even worse. This has to stop, Vanessa. I agree. That's why I think we should have a family meeting. Mom and Dad want to see you and we need to work this out properly. Mom and Dad? I hadn't spoken to my parents since I left town 4 years ago. They miss you, Izzy, and they're excited about becoming grandparents. Don't you think they deserve to meet their granddaughter? It was another manipulation, but this one hit closer to home. Despite everything that had happened, I did miss my parents, and I had wondered what they would think about becoming grandparents. They chose their side a long time ago. People can change their minds, families can heal, but not if you keep running away from us. I'm not running away. I'm protecting myself and my family. From what? From people who love you. I wanted to laugh at the irony. You have a funny way of showing love. I made mistakes, I've admitted that. But I'm trying to fix them, and you won't let me. Before I could respond, my client appeared at the door. Is everything all right out here? Yes, I'm so sorry, I said quickly. My sister was just leaving. Vanessa smiled at the woman. Actually, I was hoping I could speak with Izzy for just a few more minutes. It's about our family reunion. We're planning a celebration for when the baby arrives. I felt my face burn with embarrassment. There's no family reunion. Not yet, Vanessa said, still smiling. But we're working on it. The client looked confused and uncomfortable. Maybe you two should finish this conversation privately. We can reschedule our meeting. That won't be necessary, I said firmly. My sister was just leaving. But the damage was done. The client was clearly uncomfortable with the family drama playing out on her doorstep, and I could see her reconsidering whether she wanted to work with someone whose personal life was so chaotic. That night, I made a decision. I was done being reactive, done letting Vanessa dictate the terms of our interaction. It was time to take control of the situation. I spent hours researching harassment laws and documenting every contact Vanessa had made since our coffee meeting. I saved screenshots of her texts and emails, kept the delivery receipts from her unwanted gifts, and wrote down detailed accounts of her appearances at my work and home. Then I called a lawyer. Based on what you've told me, the attorney said after reviewing my documentation, you have grounds for a restraining order. She's engaging in a pattern of harassment that's affecting your work and your peace of mind, but she's my sister, and she hasn't threatened me physically. Harassment doesn't have to be physical to be illegal. She's stalking you, disrupting your business, and refusing to respect your clearly stated boundaries. That's enough. The restraining order would be a nuclear option, something that would make the rift between us permanent and probably destroy any remaining relationship I had with my parents. But it might be the only way to protect my growing family from Vanessa's escalating behavior. Before I filed the paperwork, I decided to give her one last chance to back down voluntarily. I sent her a text message. Meet me at Riverside Park tomorrow at 2 p.m. Come alone. This is your last opportunity to have a reasonable conversation about this situation. She responded within minutes. Thank you for reaching out. I knew you'd come around eventually. We're going to work this out, I know we are. The confidence in her response told me everything I needed to know about how she viewed this meeting. She thought she was winning. Riverside Park was busy on a Saturday afternoon, full of families with children and couples walking dogs. I chose a bench near the playground, where the sound of children laughing created an ironic backdrop for what I knew would be a difficult conversation. Vanessa arrived right on time, carrying a wrapped gift and wearing a hopeful expression. I brought something for the baby, she said, sitting down beside me and holding out the package. I don't want your gifts, it's just a little outfit. Pink, since you're having a girl, how many times do I have to tell you no before you understand what that word means? She set the gift on the bench between us. I understand that you're angry with me, but holding on to anger isn't healthy, especially when you're pregnant. Stress is bad for the baby. You want to know what's stressing me? Having my sister stalk me, show up at my work and refuse to respect my boundaries. I'm not stalking you. I'm trying to reconcile with you. By disrupting my business meetings, by sending unwanted gifts, by tracking my professional activities online. I was just trying to get your attention. Well, you have it. So let me be very clear about something. You are not going to be part of my daughter's life. You are not going to be her aunt, her co-parent, or anything else. You lost that privilege when you destroyed my wedding and showed me who you really are. Vanessa's face crumpled, but I'd learned not to trust her tears. Please don't say that. She's my family too. No, she's not. Family doesn't sabotage each other. Family doesn't manipulate and control and destroy. You're not family, you're just someone I happen to share DNA with. That's not fair. Fair? I stood up, my temper finally breaking free. You want to talk about fair? Was it fair when you destroyed my wedding? Was it fair when you let our parents blame me for something you did? Was it fair when you disappeared from my life for 4 years and then showed up demanding access to my child? People were starting to stare, but I didn't care anymore. I apologized for that. You apologized for getting caught. You've never once taken full responsibility for what you did, and you've never once asked what you could do to actually make amends. Instead, you immediately started making demands about what you wanted from me. I just want to be part of your life again. Then you should have thought about that before you chose to destroy it. I pulled out my phone and showed her the screen. This is a draft of a restraining order petition. If you contact me again, if you show up at my work again, if you send me or my family any more gifts or messages, I will file this immediately. Vanessa stared at the phone, her face going pale. You would really do that to your own sister? You're not my sister. My sister wouldn't have done what you did to me. I started to walk away, but she called after me. What about Mom and Dad? What about our family? I turned back to face her one last time. What about them? They made their choice 4 years ago when they believed your lies over my truth. They chose you so they can keep you. They want to see you. They want to meet their granddaughter. Then they know where to find me. If they want a relationship with me, they can reach out themselves. But you don't get to be their messenger, and you don't get to use them as leverage against me. Izzy, please, don't do this. Don't destroy our family. I didn't destroy our family, Vanessa. You did. I'm just refusing to let you destroy anything else. That night, I told Marcus about the conversation while we made dinner together. He listened without interrupting, occasionally reaching over to squeeze my hand. "How do you feel?" he asked when I finished. "Relieved, mostly, and sad. I keep hoping she'll prove me wrong, that she'll actually change, but people who are truly sorry don't make demands of the people they've hurt." "Exactly." I leaned against his shoulder, feeling the baby kick in response to my elevated emotions. "I just want to protect our daughter from all of this drama. You are protecting her. You're setting boundaries and sticking to them. That's exactly what a good mother does." 3 months later, our daughter was born. Eleanor Rose, 8 pounds and 2 ounces of perfect, squirming life. Holding her for the first time, I felt a fierce protectiveness that I'd never experienced before. This tiny person was depending on me to keep her safe, and I was determined not to let her down. Vanessa tried to contact me twice during my hospital stay. Once through a nurse who said my sister was calling, and once through a flower delivery with a card that read, "Congratulations to the new mommy and her beautiful daughter. Love, Aunt Vanessa." I had the flowers removed immediately and asked the hospital staff not to put through any calls from anyone with the last name Clark except my husband. The restraining order was still just a draft on my lawyer's computer, but it was ready to file at a moment's notice. 2 weeks after we brought Eleanor home, my parents showed up at our front door. I was feeding the baby when the doorbell rang. Marcus answered it and came back looking concerned. "Your mom and dad are here. They say they want to meet Eleanor." My heart started racing. I hadn't seen or spoken to my parents in 4 years, and I wasn't prepared for this moment. "Did they say anything about Vanessa?" "Your mom mentioned that they came alone, specifically without her." I looked down at Eleanor, who was staring up at me with her impossibly blue eyes. Whatever happened next, I needed to make sure it was in her best interest. "Okay, let them in. But if this turns into drama, they leave immediately." My parents looked older than I remembered, grayer and more fragile. My mother's eyes filled with tears the moment she saw me, and my father hung back awkwardly, as if he wasn't sure he was welcome. "Izzy," my mother whispered. "Oh, sweetheart, look at you, and look at her." She gestured toward Eleanor, who had finished eating and was now sleeping peacefully in my arms. "Hello, Mom, Dad, could we hold her?" my mother asked tentatively. I looked at Marcus, who nodded encouragingly, then carefully transferred Eleanor to my mother's arms. Watching my mom cradle my daughter, I felt a complicated mix of emotions: love, loss, anger, and hope all tangled together. "She's beautiful," my father said, his voice thick with emotion. "She looks like you did when you were born." "Thank you." We sat in awkward silence for a few minutes, my parents taking turns holding Eleanor while I tried to figure out what to say. Finally, my mother spoke. "We owe you an apology. A huge apology." I waited, not trusting myself to respond yet. "Vanessa told us the truth," my father continued. "About the wedding, about what she did. We should have believed you from the beginning. Why didn't you?" My mother wiped her eyes. "Because it was easier to believe that you had made a mistake than to accept that our older daughter was capable of something so cruel. And because Vanessa was so convincing, so hurt on your behalf. We thought we were protecting her from your anger, while you threw me to the wolves." "Yes," my father said quietly. "We did, and we've regretted it every day since. Not enough to reach out to me before now." "We were ashamed," my mother admitted. "And we were afraid you'd never forgive us." I looked at my parents, really looked at them, and saw 2 people who had made a terrible mistake and were genuinely sorry for it. It didn't erase the 4 years of pain and isolation, but it was a start. "I'm willing to consider forgiving you," I said carefully, "but things can't go back to the way they were. I have my own family now, and protecting them is my priority." "We understand," my father said. "We just want a chance to be in your life again, in whatever way you're comfortable with." "And Vanessa?" My parents exchanged a look that told me everything I needed to know. "We're not in contact with her right now," my mother said. "After she admitted what she'd done, and after we saw how she was harassing you, we realized we'd enabled her behavior for too long. She showed up here last week," my father added, "demanding that we convince you to let her see the baby. She said it was her right as an aunt, that we were all being unfair to her." "What did you tell her?" "We told her that she'd forfeited any rights when she chose to destroy your life," my mother said firmly. "And we told her that if she continued to harass you, we'd support whatever legal action you decided to take." It was the first time in my adult life that my parents had chosen me over Vanessa, and the relief was overwhelming. "Thank you," I whispered. We spent the rest of the afternoon getting reacquainted. My parents met Marcus properly, heard about my business, and learned about the life I'd built without them. It wasn't a complete reconciliation, there was still too much hurt for that, but it was a beginning. As they were leaving, my mother pulled me aside. "I know we can't undo the damage we caused," she said. "But we want to be good grandparents to Eleanor, if you'll let us." "I'd like that," I admitted. "But it has to be on my terms. No pressure, no guilt trips, and absolutely no contact with Vanessa." Agreed. We learned our lesson about enabling her behavior. And if she tries to use you to get to me again, then we'll shut her down immediately. Our loyalty is with you now, where it should have been all along. 6 months later, I'm sitting in Eleanor's nursery, watching her sleep, and thinking about the strange turns life can take. My parents visit every few weeks, tentatively rebuilding their relationship with me and falling in love with their granddaughter. Marcus and I are happier than ever, our little family complete and secure. And Vanessa? I haven't heard from her since the day in the park when I threatened her with a restraining order. I occasionally wonder what she's doing, whether she's learned anything from losing her entire family. But mostly, I try not to think about her at all. The other day, Eleanor smiled at me for the first time. A real, intentional smile that lit up her whole face. In that moment, I realized something important. I'm not the same person who got betrayed at her own wedding 4 years ago. I'm stronger now, more confident in my own worth, better at setting boundaries and protecting the people I love. Vanessa thought she was destroying my life when she sabotaged my wedding, but in reality, she forced me to build something better than what I'd lost. She thought she could manipulate her way back into my life by claiming rights to my daughter. But instead, she lost her family permanently. I've learned that real family isn't about blood relations or shared DNA. It's about the people who show up for you, who support your happiness, who respect your choices and love you without conditions. Eleanor will grow up surrounded by that kind of family, the kind that builds you up instead of tearing you down. And if she ever asks about her Aunt Vanessa, I'll tell her the truth, that sometimes the people who share our blood aren't worthy of sharing our lives, and that's okay. We get to choose who belongs in our family, and we get to protect that family from anyone who would harm it. That's the most important lesson I can teach my daughter, that her worth isn't determined by how others treat her, and that she never has to accept toxic behavior just because it comes from someone who claims to love her. I look down at Eleanor, sleeping peacefully in her crib, and I make her a promise. I will never let anyone hurt you the way they hurt me. You will grow up knowing your own value, setting your own boundaries, and surrounded by people who genuinely care about your well-being. That's what real love looks like, and that's the only kind of love my daughter will ever know.